The other very, very important reason for why illnesses arise is that proper things in proper measure are not taken in. So let me rephrase that a couple of different times. Earlier I said that one way of looking at the body is that it's a conglomeration of these elements in a particular mix, and it varies from person to person. We can say some people are more fiery than others, psychologically as well as physiologically. Some people are more damp than others, psychologically and physiologically. In old Greek medicine, there was the melancholic temperament, the sanguine temperament, and it was also based on elements, language of nature. There's fire, there's earth. It's visible everywhere. It's a beautiful language, and it's language that withstands the boundaries of culture and time because it's nature-based. Even today, it's intuitive. This molecular language is 20th century. It'll be meaningless in 50 years to people beyond it. And it was meaningless 100 years ago to people. But the nature-based languages are always apt. And so if using the language of nature, and we'll use the word elements, earth, air, water, and fire, and space. So everyone is of a particular combination of these things. And in Indian and Chinese medicine, one of the first things that's discerned is what exactly is my constitutional mix. And once that's discerned, then one can organize their diet and lifestyle with respect to that reality. So, for instance, given my own constitution, my own temperament, if I go too near hot, spicy things, I'm likely to burn a hole right here, and it'll be called an ulcer by someone. But for someone else, that will be balancing because they tend to be more sluggish, more damp, more mucousy. So, for them, 2 cups of coffee a day is not a problem. For me, it's too much. And for me, in the winter, when things are a bit slower anyway, 2 cups of coffee is not a problem, but not in the summer when it's hot and things are really fast anyway. That'll tend to affect the kidneys and the bladder, and it'll tend to push me towards making kidney stones. So knowing one's constitution, one then takes appropriate things in appropriate measure. And that's an art which can easily be studied. And that art still exists in Indian and Chinese medicine in terms of that's how things are still seen in a very simple way. So 2 things take the body away from health and towards illness. Well, many things do, but 2 key things that we're talking about so far. One is suppression of natural urges, and the second is intake of things that are antagonistic to one's nature and in an improper measure. So if natural flow is observed and whatever is taken in a proper measure and in a proper fit, nothing's going to go wrong, ever. The only other thing that can go wrong, if those rules are observed, is that one can take, let's say, a substantial hit from something that occurs in one's life. Grief, perhaps, loss. So if something like that occurs, that has the ability to shake the mind and the body up and change it so it behaves differently. It behaves as if it is grieving, as if it is angry, as if it is sad or afraid. So mind translates into body. But if one has lived in a certain way and remained fairly strong, then even if life takes this turn or that turn, it tends to hit one and then one can bounce back. But if one's already been shaky because one hasn't observed certain ways to be, and they are weak, then if something happens, there's the potential of going into a very serious illness and not coming out of it, or suffering for many, many, many years. So the third thing then, which preserves health, is mental strength and mental equilibrium. Whosoever has built mental strength can survive virtually anything. Their experience of the same illness is different. They suffer less. And I think finally it's important not whether or not one has a disease diagnosis, but to what extent one suffers. That's the most important thing. I bet that there's people with a very serious, so-called serious life-threatening diagnosis, but mentally very strong, with a life that's whole. And they don't suffer as much as someone weak who has something minor in comparison. So the experience of illness is not measurable simply by the name of the disease. It's a very personal, individual thing. So, and mental strength is kind of like what I've earlier called non-attachment. The ability to walk through things and not have them stick, just to kind of give them up when it's time. And this has always been an ideal in every culture at every time. People who've been able to master themselves and have reached what we can use the word spirit, have been the people that have been remembered in history, not people that made $1 million over the stock market. That stuff goes up and down, it disappears. But whosoever builds spiritual strength, that's what we respect in the final analysis. So building spiritual strength, not suppressing natural urges, and being very intelligent and aware of how one is taking one's environment, how one is relating to it. What can you eat, what can't you eat? So these three things are key. And to do these things, health is gained.